if the costs go down, those costs get passed along to the employee, and if the costs go up, they get passed along to the employee. But based on
what you're proposing then is not a percentage of salary, but a percentage of planned cost.
Correct.
That is another way of doing it. Yes. Okay. But
wouldn't that more effectively be a direct correlation to ensure that the fund is not has sufficient funds to manage its account and pass them along appropriately?
Not necessarily, because it's also a function of who can bear the cost, who can better bear the cost. A corrections officer making on average $41,600 has limited resources. PBTF that has $500 million in reserve is better able to absorb some of these costs. And that also presupposes that those employees have an equal say in the benefit structure and the benefit design, and what gets provided and what gets cut, what is added, what is subtracted, how it affects the entire PBTF, unless you're taking the corrections officers out of PBTF and putting them in a totally separate fund. Again, I mean, if you talk about that, then you can define the contribution and define the benefits as well.
But practically speaking, whether you do it as a percentage of salary or a percentage of planned costs, a percentage of premium, we're not necessarily talking about lowering the cost to the employee. We're talking about stemming the rate of increase. I mean, even under your experience, I think you said there was only one negative year where the cost actually went down at 0.5% or so, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So in real dollars, the contribution will continue to climb, but hopefully it won't climb as much as every time they get a wage increase as a percentage of salary. In real dollars, more money goes to the fund.
Because
and if
medical costs continue to rise as those pharmacy costs.
Right, so whether it's percentage, what you're trying to accomplish and what you've kind of presented us to this morning is stemming the rate of increase.
Yes.
But realistically, there's always going to be, or most often going to be, at least some increase.
If medical inflation is running 6 to 8%, and you're able to keep your costs on average 2 or 3%.
You're ahead of the game.
Very far ahead.
Right. Okay.
Bill, and I always wondered about the whole percentage of salary thing, because at first, when the Commonwealth, not the union, obviously, came up with this whole idea of a percentage of salary, my question was, well, do you take into consideration, for instance, we have two identical employees who both make, let's say, $41,000 a year and are therefore going to pay the same freight on this particular employee premium share. But one of those employees is single and 25 years old and is in excellent health, and the other is, you know, like Todd, who has 16 kids and a wife. And you'd think, logically, that he would utilize more of the resources of the plan. With respect to that, I've always wondered why this percentage of salary was something that the Commonwealth wanted so very, very badly, which apparently has now changed positions on. Is there any validity to that argument at all?
Other than administrative ease, it's far easier for them to make a uniform deduction of salary than it is to track, okay, Todd gets a certain family rate, and you get yet another rate, and you as a single individual get another rate.
And then I guess we'd get into the question of, okay, for instance, I have a parent, you know, parent and child, utilizing concepts in the purchasing on premiums world. I have a parent and child rate, or I have a family rate, and my family consisted of 3 people, husband, wife, child. That's the same, basically, in the world that they live in, that's the same rate you're going to pay whether you're like me with 3 people or you're like Todd with the brood he has.
This is true.
Okay. So in order to make it equitable, I think the idea is that we would have to stick with salary because there's, I guess, or either that or we'd have to start counting belly buttons and start analyze utilization by belly buttons.
Yes.
How difficult would that be?
Well, instead of PEPM, it's PMPM, for member per month, member being a belly button. And a lot of factors come into play. Actuaries are very good about this and taking into account average contract size, and they can come up with a PMPM cost, and that could then be translated into a premium co-share. But it just complicates. I agree with you that it does complicate the process. Especially
if we're trying to treat similarly situated people in a similar fashion.
I think you have to look at the overall goal. And the overall goal is to have this carrot or a stick or some combination of carrot and stick to garner participation to achieve the goals of a disease management program.
And with respect to that, you had talked about an 80% target rate. Is that because there's actual evidence within other Commonwealth units that such a phenomenal participation rate can be achieved?
Oh yes, there are 2.
Okay.
Park Rangers and Capitol Police. More particularly, I think that the Park Rangers have a high 90%.
Yeah, the highest in the entire Commonwealth. Because an arbitrator recognized the value of participation based upon the testimony of individuals both from the Commonwealth, and from the unions.
Was that a question?
Yeah.
No, I think that was a hint to me.
That was a suggestion.
Cross-exam?
Actually, I would call it a fact.
I don't have any further questions.
I know we've been doing it all day, but any further questions from the panel?
Just, Bill, Proposal 3F, number 1, which relates to some limitation on the salary considered for the purposes of co-insurance calculation. I assume you had not drafted that?
3F1.
Yeah.
No, I did not.
Okay, thanks.
Any redirect?
What am I, chopped liver?
You've exceeded your quota of questions.
Oh, come on. I was having fun.
Attorney Einhorn, the Commonwealth raised an issue about whether we should tie in the reduction that an employee receives and what they pay to the reduction in claims. So if the claims go down, the employee should benefit. You recall that recent?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we already have a provision in the current collective bargaining agreement that's similar to that, don't we?
Yes.
And that provision indicates that if reserves are 3 months plus, and that's certified by the fund's actuary, the trustees have to consider a reduction in employee contributions, correct?
Correct.
So in fact, that provision exists, and that provision has never been implemented, has it?
No.
All right, that's all I have.
I just have one follow-up, not on that, on something else. With the Get Healthy program, or whatever you call it, with the Teamsters Fund, there's obviously a cost to implementing a Get Healthy program. And how does that correlate to your savings? Like,
I would say that conservatively, for every dollar spent in disease management fund saves $13.
Right.
That's a conservative calculation.
Can I ask
Is there a ramp-up period? Like you're paying the nurse to make the phone calls before the savings are realized?
In some funds, it can take some time. As I said, in our particular fund, we saw the results almost immediately, within a period of just a few months.
What's the cost for the party that you pay to reach out to the members, to interview them?
Unfortunately, some of that is proprietary.
Okay.
In the negotiations between the Teamsters Fund and the disease management vendor.
It's fine.
But
So you get a range,
I will tell you this, though. Remember I spoke of care gap letters
yes.
and the amount of letters that are sent directly to doctors? That-
2,000, I think you said you sent
Well,
out.
that was 2,783 adherence or compliance letters. They didn't fill their prescriptions on time,
Okay.
which means either they filled it too early, 10 days before, or didn't fill it within 10 days after. That they consider that non-compliance, and 2,783 letters of those went out. But in addition to that, several thousand letters went out to doctors about other care gaps. Jim Sullivan should have had this done and didn't. Todd Egan should have had this done and he didn't. All those letters were generated at a cost of 14 cents per employee per month. That came to about $16,000. And the savings were unbelievable.
Well, your staff has to, who does the analysis of the gap in the care?
That's one of the contracts we have with the disease management fund.
And your dollar spent to $13 saved ratio is your conservative estimate for the Teamster Fund. Have any information on how the Gut Healthy program for PEBTF, what the cost versus the savings are?
I think it's in the lower single digits, like 5 or 6.
Okay, all right.
There are definite savings to it, and it's something that I think has to be built on, and it's very, very important. It's time to take it to the next level, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Anyone have further questions?
Even me?
You can ask 2 more.
Okay, just one simple question. Back in 2003, when the fund, as you said, when PBTF was going bankrupt, how did it, I mean, was it just a change in plan design that turned things around, or was there any kind of cash infusion?
There was a cash infusion by the governor using Department of Transportation funds.
And do you recall how much that was approximately?
Between $80 and $93 million.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Einhorn. We appreciate your testimony. Let's go off the record. We'll take a couple minutes so we can clear stuff out. All right, Todd, when you're ready.
Sure. At this point in time, what we plan to do is go through some more proposals, some of which are pretty self-explanatory, and we will go through very briefly, with the understanding that we know that the panel is, or the Board of Arbitrators is going to obviously review all of this material prior to executive session and review it further in executive session. A lot of the material presented is for the benefit of the board to review prior to executive session, but quite frankly, we don't need to go into it in quite detail right now. So I'm going to go proposals 1 through 9, and we're going to have 3 separate witnesses throughout those proposals. So.
Okay.
The first proposal, and I'm going into proposal book number 1 right now, is the term of the agreement, and quite frankly, we are just looking for a 1-year contract. All of our slides, as you see right now, have our proposal and then have the current language, if it's short enough. For example,
Another idiot.
Goes Attorney Einhorn.
for example, like when we get to the grievance procedure, I have not included in the slides the current grievance procedure because it's 4 or 5 pages. But
Okay.
so the term, I think, is self-explanatory. We don't need to go into any testimony on that unless there's specific questions from the board or the Commonwealth. I'm just going to move on to the next proposal.
Okay.
The second one is wages.